I'm going to show you this. These are some cashews I had soaking from maybe noon or 11. These are whole cashews. I encourage you heavily to buy pieces of cashew because they're cheaper. These were cheaper than the pieces, and it pains me, and that's what you're seeing in my eyes, to have these beautiful whole cashews that we're just going to puree. So you can usually get pieces, sometimes even at Trader Joe's, or broken cashews, sometimes at Sprouts, and almost always at your local Indian market. So that's a good thing. So we're going to strain the water out of this, and I'm going to need some extra water, so let me grab that too. This is indeed one of my most favorite cheese that I make at home. I do make a sliceable cheese too. And get every last cashew out of there. You know I'm going to do that. Okay, so we're just straining it. They don't have to be strained perfectly. It's okay if there's a little liquid because we're putting some water in there. So soaking them makes them soft, and it's going to make them more creamy. If you wanted to make this right now after watching it, you could put water on the cashews and heat it up on the stovetop, and that would break them down just as well. You can also soak a lot of cashews, but I would maybe measure it dry for a half a cup or a cup. Soak them, just strain them, and then you can put them in your freezer. Just know this was once 1 cup of cashews, right? Because that's how it's going to go back. It's going to say take 1 cup of cashews dry and then soak them. So these are a lot of ways that you could do this. Okay. Let me get everything. We're going to use a few possibly new to you ingredients, and possibly not. Let me get a couple of extra measuring spoons. So, and here's the other thing I didn't tell you yet, because you're like, that's going to make a ton, lady. What the heck? Yes, it does. You can freeze part of it. So it's like a double batch. And then on those weeks or months or whatever's where you're like, I really wish I could have a cheese platter, you can. So there you go. All right, so we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of miso. Miso is a fermented soybean paste. This is not the yellow miso it calls for. You know why? Because this is the one in my fridge. See, I told you I was like that. So whatever miso you have, it could change the color ever so slightly, and that's okay. We're okay with it, however it ends up working out. Okay, so I'm totally going to need another spatula. But don't worry, I have 8 bazillion spatulas because I love them so much. Okay. Alrighty. I think where I'm going to put that one. Let's close this up. Miso will last for so long, like years long. So don't be afraid. A lot of times a tub could be like $7, $8, but you may use that. Unless you have miso soup every morning, you're not going to go through it really fast. It's a wonderful way to give a little bit of umami and saltiness to regular savory foods. All right, we're going to do 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, and that's also going to give some of that tart, sour cheesiness. Put this guy there. Hello. And we're going to use a surprise ingredient that, oh, this is a new bottle. And my granny bottle opener, or jar opener, that I'm going to be using. I have teeny tiny hands, so there we go. It always does the trick. And you could also use a different kind of vinegar. I would not necessarily use something like balsamic, because that's going to add a sweetness that at this point we're not looking to put in there. If you are, you could. You could use white vinegar. You could use rice vinegar. I just love apple cider vinegar. We're putting 2 tablespoons. And we can always adjust some of this down. So, for instance, Dawn hates vinegar. So you could start off with half that amount, 1 tablespoon. Then taste it. And if it's not sour enough, you could add a little bit more. We're also going to add this really cool stuff that I love, which is vegan lactic acid. And I'll let you see that a little bit closer. Okay, I use the Druid's Grove just because that's the one I have. Okay, we're going to put 2 teaspoons in. We need some stuffs to put in here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to do a teaspoon of smoked paprika. And that's going to add a nice smoky flavor. If you had regular paprika, you could put some liquid smoke in there. Hate smoky flavors, just use regular paprika. We're going to put a teaspoon of garlic powder. Garlic powder and onion powder are really great friends, and especially in some kind of cheesy sauce. Then we're going to do some mustard powder. Also gives it a little bit of bite. So if you don't have lactic acid, you can still make this. It's just not going to be quite as sharp. But make sure that you're using some dry mustard. Don't have dried mustard. You're like, what are you asking me for? Use mustard from your fridge. Okay, that'll work too. Mustard powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, not this. I'm getting ready to put cardamom in there. Like a crazy person. Don't be crazy, Kathy. This is past my my online teaching time, but I took a disco nap this afternoon, so I'm like, woo, ready to go. And you could go ahead and put in about a half teaspoon of salt, or with the miso, you could add more miso if you're not doing any kind of added salt. So that's totally up to you. And I would think we're going to use, this is nutritional yeast. I can't believe I left nutritional yeast out of this recipe. 1/4 cup. Let's start with a 1/4 cup. I suspect we're going to go for a 1/2 cup. And we're also doing some water. I'm going to start with 1/2 cup of water. Even though we may need quite more. Okay, so we know this is probably not enough water, but we're going to start anyhow. Because you never know. And I'm just going to push all this other stuff down because I don't know where my plunger is. So everything on the side you guys saw, but you can kind of see like all of this stuff didn't go down yet. So I'm just going to mix it around. And I like to make this as thick as possible. So I'm actually going to say start with 1/2 cup of water. I'll let you guys see how chunky that is right now. It's quite the chunkster. I'm going to get all that good flavor as much as I can back in there. I'm going to take the chance that we can take this out because I think it is so thick it is not going to do anything bad. Can you even, yeah, you can sort of see through. There we go. Okay, and you guys could kind of see it made the 4, right? You don't have to have a Vitamix to do this. You just will have to use more water. And let me taste this, and let's see, with any recipe you ever do, mine or anybody else's, I'm still gonna, I see some miso around the corners here, and I'm gonna get that in there. It's pretty darn good as is. It could have a little more salt. If I was serving salted crackers with this, I wouldn't go any further. If I was serving things without salt, you could put a little more miso in there if you wanted to, instead of regular salt. It really is that orange from the smoked paprika. So the paprika is going to give it that kind of orange pub cheese color. Normally, when I'm making something that's kind of cheddary, I put carrots or sweet potatoes or something like that to color it, but this does. I'm going to go ahead. You could stop at a 1/4 cup. I'm going to try. I'm going to try a half. No. Yeah, a half. And then I can tell you what to do. Since whenever I made this in a class, and evidently I was a crazy person and didn't write down, which happens sometimes. Let's see if we can get this guy going back. I'm gonna have to do some of this. I'm gonna have to get that in there, and I may have to go ahead and add maybe another tablespoon of water. Know that as this is in the fridge, it is going to thicken up a little bit more, which is great, and in the freezer too. So I usually put that in like a glass Pyrex dish with a top so that I can serve it. I just take it out like the day before. Now let's try this again. And right now too, so you could go ahead and add more paprika. You could have added more garlic or onion if that was the flavor you wanted. If you wanted it more sharp, you could have added a little more lactic acid or mustard powder or regular for your vegan hot dog mustard. So this is the time to do that. Add a little more salt. Maybe you're like, I think I want to add ancho chili powder. You could do it. You could indeed. So see, it's ever so looser, just a little bit looser. Let me get a new spoon, because again, like everything else, if I want this to last longer, I need to not introduce anything to it. But see how thick that is? And I'll show you from the top. It's still pretty darn thick. And it will get thicker as it stays in the fridge. You can make this thinner so that we can, I'm going to cut up some apples. I've got some cherry tomatoes. I've got some baby carrots, and I'm going to do some bell pepper slices so that you could dip into this. You can make it a proper dip. Could go either way. I'm going to tell you a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup to taste on this, which is not in your recipes yet. it will be. So let's go ahead and I'll pour some of this in here. Yeah. Okay. See how velvety it is? That's its cashew goodness. I'll take care of the rest of this. Just trying to make sure none of it's going to escape. Whoop. Alrighty. So again, we can freeze this. Probably in the fridge, it's going to last up to 2 weeks. But I would keep out what you're going to eat in a week. So for instance, if you have a small family, you might freeze it in these, what are these, 1 cup portions. Just so you'd have it, you just pull it out, you guys, you can plop that on your cheese platter. If you have a larger family, you can make a larger one. But that's the way you're gonna have your best go at it. And so, I'll let you guys see this from the top. See, it's all smooth and yummy.